All right, welcome to HackerKast. What is this, HackerKast?
12.
12. 12 or 13? I don't know, but it's been fun so far.
We got to celebrate the Lucky 13, though.
I don't know, do we?
I can talk about Lucky 13. It's a really cool SSL attack.
It's actually a good idea.
So this is HackerKast. My name is Jeremiah Grossman. I am the founder and CEO of White Hat Security. On my right here, we have Robert Hansen, and we're both in the Hilton lobby in just outside LAX.
Yes.
So it's going to be a busy day. And we also have Matt Johansen with us, manager of TRC Houston.
Hello, hello. Not in a lobby of a hotel.
He
Yes, you are. It's just Hotel Johansen.
Johansen.
Matt's got the great job of managing the hacker army.
Do you even work out, bro?
Not enough. Not enough.
All right, so let's talk about some application security stuff. A little bit of a slow news week, but there's a lot of stuff going on out there. We got, the Sony hack. We got Iran in the action. We got WordPress phones. So I say we get right to it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's go down the list. Let's start with Operation Cleaver. Operation Cleaver, this is a pretty interesting one. This was a report, like 81-page report, something called Operation Cleaver that's a company called Cylance put together on tracking the activities of one particular group. So apparently this is Iran, and what it made interesting was the types of systems the threat, if you want to call it that, was attacking. They were attacking airports, transportation systems across 16 countries. Pretty
didn't we
scary.
fly to get here?
Yeah. It's pretty scary stuff. But when and Dan Gooden, we'll post a link to it, but Dan Gooden from Ars Technica had a great article that put out some great snippets, but I got to read a portion of it. Operation Cleaver hacking campaign, it's dubbed, has attained the highest level of system access of targets located in 16 countries, according to the report. Compromised systems include ongoing attacks against Active Directory domain controllers, login credentials, Windows, Linux, 50 victims. It's crazy. Like anything that's not locked down, these guys own. So I don't know how much of this report is correct and accurate, but it's pretty scary. But if you read down the article, what is the front doorway in? Dun, 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 dun. SQL injection seems to be the front doorway in, and then these guys pivot and do all these things. So, what do you guys think?
No surprise on the front door.
I think it's great. I think I think stuff like this is a nice warning shot across the bow. It's the canary in the coal mine. But one thing I thought was actually really interesting about this particular article is they gain persistence by getting access to their GoDaddy or whatever the registrar accounts are. So that effectively means not only do they own whatever that one physical device is, but they completely can just point everything to their own stuff and maintain access.
I was just talking about this yesterday. That's the same thing the Syrian Electronic Army did to, what was it, New York Times? I don't know, a year ago, just under a year ago. Same thing. They hacked their registrar and just pointed the DNS somewhere else.
I mean, there's no real defense to that. I mean, the really terrible thing is it all comes down to mail. Like, if you can't secure mail, you can't secure anything.
Yeah.
Because mail is how you get your second factor of authentication for your registrar, and if they own that, then they own everything, and they can just point everything at them.
Forget about second factor of authentication, just password reset.
Exactly.
I heard somebody I couldn't tell if it was tongue-in-cheek or real, but somebody named Gmail, an acronym, was like the Global Mail Authenticator, like something library. It was great. But yeah, I mean, so after you get hacked, then you have to go change all the passwords from all your providers, like all your Dropbox accounts, your GoDaddy accounts. It's pretty horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And to move on to the next subject, we can't do a HackerKast without talking about Sony. I mean, Sony's in the news again on a major compromise. Got a feel for those guys. I mean, because it's not just the company getting hacked. These are actually real people that are having their salary information, their healthcare information spilled online. I mean, there's a real human aspect to this hack going on. So for those that aren't familiar with the Sony hack, we don't know who exactly did it. They kind of named themselves. We don't know who they are. We really don't know how they broke in. But we do know that
there's some speculation.
There's some speculation, right? But we do know about 40 gigabytes of No, wait. So 40 gigabytes released online out of 100 terabytes the bad guys said they got.
Yeah.
So right there, I'm thinking like, how do you download 100 terabytes? How do you upload 100 terabytes?
Not on Comcast.
Oh, that's not cool.
I was thinking about this a little bit. I think the fact that it is Sony works against them a little bit, because normally a company would notice 100 terabytes being pushed up out of their network pretty quickly. People would just be complaining like crazy. But because it's Sony, because they have to do these massive file transfers with their game developing companies, with the production houses for their movies or whatever, they're used to pushing around huge files. So I bet that's why it just totally went under the wire. No one even noticed.
And the other thing you got to think about is like the internal security of any corporate network is pretty soft. I mean, across the board. Yeah. I'm not saying anything here. I know there's speculations, and it's a lot of times in an industry you bash the victim, but what are we seeing here that they've done horribly differently than everybody else?
Well, one thing they did differently is they protected their exterior well enough that you had to go internal.
That's a really good point. If the bad guys required insiders, that means other areas, their network security, their web security, was probably pretty good. I mean, if Iran's using SQL injection, but that's not how they got into Sony, that's kind of telling, actually.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And then the other thing to mention, besides the 40 gigs, was the torrents that popped up this week of, I think, was it 5 unreleased movies? That's their bread and butter. That's pretty intense. That's not just people's personal information and credit card numbers and stuff like that. This is like, how they make the sausage, right? Like this is their what pays the bills over there. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so they're going to be reeling from this for a while. They're going to have to do a lot of cleanup. It's going to cost them a lot of money. It's going to take some time. I mean, how do you know the bad guys didn't backdoor every system? I mean, it's going to take a while. So, so yeah. All right, let's go on to the next subject here. Let's talk about these. Every week we're talking about a WordPress vault.
Every single week.
Every single week a WordPress.
I get stuck with it.
When they stop having them, we'll stop talking about
it. All right. So what's up with this WordPress vault? The WordPress plugin vault, something like 850,000 servers, which seems like a lot in one sense, but it's actually kind of a small bug in retrospect.
Yeah, in past weeks, WordPress vulns, I guess this one's a little bit small, but 850,000, this is why we have to keep talking about it. This is massive amounts of sites that are affected by these, and the exploitation, bar is really, really low. Like the how hard it is for anyone to even figure this out is so stupid easy. So this is a WordPress download manager. So if you have WordPress download manager, go patch to whatever 2.7.5. But yeah, 850,000 downloads, and it's just straight up remote code execution.
Oh.
The easiest remote code execution that you could possibly have. Just blatant.
Who found this bug?
Securi. Some researchers over at Securi.
Those guys are on a tear. They really know their WordPress stuff, and they're always releasing good bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess they put out a WAF, and they were looking at some stuff, and they noticed some RCE, so remote code execution. So I mean, this is as easy as it gets. It's post request code executed.
So it kind of goes to show you can't run a naked WordPress server anymore. I mean, you just can't trust the thing. Yes, it's open. It's open source, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it supposed to not have these bugs? They're all supposed to be shallow.
Well, these are technically there's all kind. I mean, this is a plugin, so the plugins, on the other hand,
yeah.
When's the last time you've seen a really good exploit in WordPress core?
When's the last time you've seen a WordPress installation without a plugin?
Never.
Yeah, those are two really good points, right? And the same thing with Drupal, the same thing with a lot of these, right? And it really comes down to the plugins versus the core. But, not to say the core hasn't seen its fair share of bugs, right? But the plugins are, just completely unrestricted. But 850,000 downloads, you would expect some eyes would be on this, and I guess they are, right? This is how this got found. But I mean, we'll link to the research. The code, the vulnerable code, is this little function. It's less than 7 lines of code, and it's just, oh, here's a post request via HTTP to this, what is this? The function is literally WordPress download manager Ajax _call _exec. The function Ajax call and then execute in the name of the function.
Okay, I'm sorry. I take it back. I take it back. These security guys, they don't know what they're doing. That's too easy. I'm not impressed.
It's seriously it's this global post variable execute. I mean, it just takes the PHP code from a post request, executes it. So you name it, you can do it on a WordPress site with this vulnerability. You can do whatever the heck you want. Execute your own PHP code, admin accounts, yada yada.
Don't run a naked WordPress. Put a layer of security on or something, and always update your plugins or get rid of them.
Yeah, that's an important point. I see a lot of people with plugins that they don't even use, that are just sitting there. They're like, oh well, we never turned it on, so we're not vulnerable to it. It's like, no, that code is there. Like, you can't just leave these plugins installed. Only admin plugins that you absolutely need to use on your WordPress account.
All right, let's talk about another vuln. This one hit PayPal. This was actually pretty simple, pretty interesting, and it did hit PayPal. So I think, Robert, you're looking at that one, right?
Yeah, a researcher out of Egypt named Yasser Ali basically found out that you could use cross-site request forgery to bypass some very important function, which basically allows you to reset security passwords or security questions. And from there, you can use those new security questions to get access to the account. So all you have to do is get somebody to click a link, and you basically have access to their account, which is just about the worst vuln PayPal could have, I think.
And I know, I think we all remember when cross-site request forgery wasn't considered a vuln.
Yeah.
And now you go click and hack PayPal.
Cross-site request forgery is probably the one bug that I have to explain most often. It's for some reason it's just against human nature to understand it. It's like a weird how the internet works. It's like
it's a good
vulnerable to cross-site request forgery.
It's a good point. I run into the same thing. It's kind of like the more you understand how the web works, the more you go, why is that a vuln again? It's because it's like that's how the web works. Yeah, I agree with you. But and it's also very difficult to eradicate. It's probably more difficult than cross-site scripting.
Oh, way harder.
It's really hard.
Way harder.
So you just have to pick and choose where. You just have to pick and choose where you're protecting against it, right? It's like, oh, I'm not going to put CSRF tokens on any request on my website. It's like, okay, on password reset, you got to protect against it. Things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, you know, PayPal, they do take application security incredibly seriously. We all know people on their team over there, so they, just like everybody else, has these issues. But, you know, it's great that they have a bounty program. Researcher found it. I bet you they turned around really, really quickly, bonus them, and everybody's protected, so no fallout. Yeah, it's pretty good. And we're able to share it and learn from it, so it's all really good stuff as far as... the other one, here's the last one we'll talk about here. It's kind of interesting. Everybody remembers CAPTCHAs. You know, typing in those horrible things in images where I can't even read it. I have to constantly reload to get an easy CAPTCHA. Google has, it looks like they've upped the game. They want you to detect bots without having to fill out those squiggly characters, and they're going to do it with a single click on a checkbox. What do they call this thing? It's based on reCAPTCHA, but it's called No-Captcha reCAPTCHA. I don't know why they named it that, but okay. They're just rolling it out now. They're making the libraries and APIs available. I'm really interested to see if this works. Can they really detect a bot with a single click?
I have so many problems with this. Well, first of all, the answer is absolutely yes today, because they have the right heuristics in place to do this kind of thing. In the same way, they've always had this type of heuristics for click fraud. Click fraud has always been something that they can detect based on attributes like you know, your user agent strings and, you know, things like how fast you click on it, you know, mouse movements, different HTTP headers, and so on, right? There's a whole bunch of timing and a bunch of stuff. So they've already had this code available in the back end for a long time, but they've never exposed it before. Now they've exposed it, so any hacker can go just fuzz it and say, did this work? No. How about this? No. How about this? Oh, yay, great. I worked past all of your heuristics for all of this back-end bot detection stuff. It's a terrible, terrible idea. It's the same thing that, like, once upon a time, firewalls were all set in a block mode for for blocking certain countries because people felt like, well, I don't want any traffic coming from those countries. So what did the bad guys do? They started using Tor. They started using VPNs. They started using hacked machines in other countries. So now you lost that one very valuable signal you had, which is anytime a packet comes from North Korea, you know it's probably not something that Sony wants in their network or whatever.
So I can't believe I'll be defending Google on this one. But I think they had to do something, or somebody had to do something, because CAPTCHAs clearly weren't working. The bad guys were solving the CAPTCHAs.
Well, they won't work now, too.
Oh, well.
And here's the best part about this. So people will figure out how to get past this thing. But Google really never cared about having a really awesome CAPTCHA. All they really cared about was adoption. They want more of their code running on more websites so they can see more of the traffic on the internet.
Oh, very Machiavellian.
I'm serious. That's what it's there for. Now, conversions will go up. People are more likely to use it as a result of conversions being higher. And then they get their code on more web pages. So they can see more stuff.
What do you think, Matt?
I don't know. I'm kind of in the yeah. I know. I've been in the silent observer camp here. Yeah. You know, if it's I'm kind of wondering what Arsenic thinks. Is it more or less bypassable than a typing CAPTCHA? That's an important question.
Oh, it's way easier to bypass.
You think so?
Way easier.
Huh.
Oh, it's certainly, because you can fuzz this. You can fuzz it all day long, and who cares if you get caught? Oh, well, you just go over to another exit node or another hacked account somewhere or whatever, and you just keep fuzzing until you figure out a way around it. It's going to extremely easy.
It's going to take some time for the bad guys to catch up to speed. So maybe this is good to deploy for the next 2 weeks.
No. But here's the bad part. It's not just easy to bypass today. What it really does is it up levels every bad guy everywhere to make it so that bot heuristics is basically a broken thing. Like once upon a time, this would work great. I mean, as long as you never exposed it. But from here forward, we're watching a science experiment in very slow motion right now. We're going to be watching all of the adversaries who care about bypassing bots getting bots that are so sophisticated that they cannot be detected. It's a terrible idea. Google is really
so what you're saying is this breaks heuristics that anyone that using any other type of heuristics anywhere else, right, in your IDS, your IPS, your WAFs, whatever it is, it's going to break it because they're going to have to bypass this Google thing.
Right.
Okay. Here's a great one. So Google had a bounty program. If you figure out a way to break the CAPTCHA, do we get bounties?
I would assume so.
No way. They didn't get no way. You don't think? I've already bypassed. What are you talking about?
Maybe a side project, a bonus round. We'll figure that one out to see if we get bounty based upon breaking their new CAPTCHA.
All right, you heard it here. The three of us are racing for that bounty.
All right, so we got those 4 stories. We got Operation Cleaver, fix your SQL injection. Actually, we talked about this morning. You got to find your websites and make sure they don't have SQL injection in it at the very least. In the case of Sony, monitor your outbound traffic for 100 terabytes leaving your network. That's definitely a good thing. Don't run naked WordPress patch, and watch out for those plugins. And if you can be botted, you probably will. There's not a great solution for that one. Out-of-bound SMS, email, click this to verify.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been another episode of HackerKast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Click like, click subscribe. We are on YouTube, so we got to do that sort of thing. Thanks, everybody.